A cabin of forbidden desire. The arrival. Setting the stage. Mia and Ethan had been planning their weekend getaway for months. The stress of city life in Seattle had worn them down, and the idea of a secluded cabin in the forests of Oregon felt like paradise. The drive itself was long, winding through foggy roads, tall pines looming like silent guards. Mia fiddled with the GPS, muttering about how out of signal they were becoming, while Ethan, sitting beside her, smiled. "That's the point," he said, eyes gleaming with excitement. "We need a place away from the world. No distractions. Just us, and maybe some mysteries." The cabin appeared suddenly through the mist. A wooden structure, seemingly abandoned, its paint peeling and windows clouded with dust. A soft creek ran beside it, reflecting the moonlight. Ethan parked, stepped out, and breathed in the crisp, cold air. "It's perfect," he whispered. Mia shivered. Something about the air felt wrong. A subtle tension, like the forest itself was watching them, but she brushed it off. "It's just the isolation." "Don't start thinking about ghosts already," she teased, though her voice carried an uneasy tone. Inside, the cabin smelled of damp wood and old fires. There were 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen, and a living room with a stone fireplace. Dust particles floated in the air, illuminated by the pale moonlight streaming through the windows. Ethan immediately started unpacking strange devices, small cameras, EMF meters, and other gadgets Mia didn't recognize. "For science," he said, grinning. "We can measure energy in the cabin. Maybe there's some residual paranormal activity." Mia rolled her eyes. Or maybe it's just old wood creaking. As night fell, the forest outside seemed to come alive. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying soft, unintelligible murmurs. Shadows shifted just beyond the window panes. Mia felt a chill brush against her neck, though Ethan was standing right beside her. She shook her head. "It's just nerves," she whispered. But even as she said it, a tiny part of her wondered if they... The first encounter with the unknown. The cabin was quiet, save for the occasional creak of the old floorboards and the crackle of the fireplace. Ethan poured them both a glass of wine, the dim light reflecting in his mischievous eyes. "Relax," he said, handing a glass to Mia. "We're here to enjoy ourselves. No stress, no work, just us." Mia took a sip, trying to ignore the unease that still clung to her. The forest outside pressed against the windows like dark, breathing walls. Shadows twisted and lingered longer than they should, yet she told herself it was just her imagination. Ethan leaned closer, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You've been working too hard," he whispered. "You deserve to let go." At first it was tender, just kisses and soft touches. But as the night deepened, a strange intensity settled over the room. Mia felt it first as a subtle weight pressing against her skin, almost like fingers she couldn't see. She froze for a moment, pulling back. "Ethan, did you?" she started, but he shook his head, smiling softly. "I didn't do anything. Relax." The sensation didn't go away. It was warm, intimate, and yet wrong. It wasn't Ethan's touch. Mia felt goosebumps spread across her body, her heart racing. Shadows danced in the corners of the room, and the candle flames flickered violently, even though the air was still. Her breaths came faster. Ethan noticed the change, but mistook it for excitement. He moved closer, hands tracing her curves. But Mia's body felt unsteady, responding in ways she couldn't control. Panic gnawed at the edges of her mind. Then she saw it, briefly, in the reflection of the fireplace glass. A pale figure, just behind Ethan, reaching for her. She gasped, pulling back, and Ethan turned to see her face. "What is it?" he asked, confused. "I don't know. I thought I saw something," Mia stammered. Before they could process it, the air grew colder. The fireplace flickered out, plunging the room into darkness. The sensation of being touched continued, impossible yet undeniable. Mia's skin prickled and a shiver ran down her spine. Ethan fumbled with his flashlight, and when the beam hit the corners of the room, nothing was there. Yet the feeling persisted. Mia realized with horror that this was no ordinary sensation. Someone or something was here with them, feeding off the intimacy, twisting desire into terror. Her voice trembled. "Ethan, we need to stop." But as soon as the words left her lips, Ethan moved closer again, unaware. Mia tried to resist, but the entity seemed to manipulate her body, forcing sensations that didn't belong to her. She screamed, a mix of fear and panic, but the darkness swallowed her voice. Night in the cabin had begun not as a romantic escape, but as a terrifying confrontation with something hungry, unseen, and intimately aware of their deepest desires. The revelation, the entity's secret. The first night in the cabin had left Mia trembling. Even though the sun had risen, the fog outside made the forest look like a gray, silent ocean. Ethan was fiddling with his gadgets, trying to dismiss the night's events as nothing more than imagination. Or perhaps his devices catching strange energy. But Mia couldn't shake the feeling that something had been inside the room with them, something that had touched her in ways Ethan couldn't understand. As she explored the cabin, she stumbled upon a small, hidden compartment beneath the floorboards. Curiosity outweighed fear, and she opened it to find an old, leather-bound journal. The pages were yellowed, brittle with age, and the ink faded but legible. The first entry chilled her. The lurker waits in the cabins of the woods. It feeds on desire, on the fire between lovers. Its touch is subtle at first, pleasure that isn't yours, sensations you cannot resist. Once it enters willingly, it drains the soul, leaving only husks behind. Mia shivered. The description matched exactly what had happened the night before. She flipped through more pages. Accounts from previous visitors, all couples who had stayed in the cabin. Warnings etched in frantic handwriting. Never let it touch you willingly. Lust is its doorway. Drawings of shadowy figures with hands reaching from the corners, often merging with the human body. Ethan came over, peering at the journal. "This is just a creepy diary. Probably written by someone who got scared for no reason," he said. But even as he spoke, the devices he had set up started flickering violently. The forest outside seemed darker now, more oppressive. Shadows moved unnaturally, as if watching, waiting. Suddenly, a low whisper echoed through the room. Not in words, but in sensation intimate, almost seductive murmur that made Mia's skin crawl. The journal dropped from her hands. Ethan grabbed her, holding her close. "We need to leave. Now." But leaving wasn't that simple. The entity was stronger in daylight, feeding on their combined fear and curiosity. Every glance they shared was mirrored by a fleeting shadow in the corners. Every innocent touch sparked unnatural warmth pleasure twisted into something sinister. Mia realized the truth. This cabin wasn't just haunted. It was a trap, designed to exploit desire, and they had stumbled right into its hands or its claws. With dread, she turned to Ethan. "We have to fight it, or it will consume us completely." Ethan nodded, fear finally breaking through his skepticism. The journal, maybe it has instructions to stop it. The forest outside seemed to lean closer, listening, waiting for the next move. And deep inside the shadows of the cabin, something stirred. Patient, hungry, and intimately the entity strikes. Night fell again, thicker and heavier than before. The fog outside the cabin crept through the cracks in the windows, wrapping the cabin in a gray, suffocating embrace. Mia and Ethan tried to prepare themselves, following the hints in the journal about resisting the entity. But as soon as the lights dimmed, the air grew colder, almost tangible in its weight. Shadows moved independently of the room's corners, curling and twisting like dark fingers. Mia could feel them brushing against her skin, probing, teasing, and drawing energy from her very body. Ethan grabbed her hand, trying to anchor her, but even his touch felt wrong. A subtle, intoxicating force seemed to flow between them, not theirs, but imposed by something unseen. Mia gasped, her body reacting uncontrollably. "This isn't us," she whispered. It's inside us." Suddenly, Ethan froze. His eyes glazed and he couldn't move, as if invisible chains held him in place. The entity had begun to take control. Mia tried to pull away, but she felt herself being drawn toward Ethan, as though guided by an invisible hand. Her body moved in ways she didn't command, pleasure and fear intertwining into a paralyzing confusion. She screamed, but the sound felt swallowed by the room. The shadows gathered, stretching toward them. Soft whispers filled the air, voices mimicking their moans, mocking them, urging them on. Every intimate gesture became a weapon in the hands of the entity, twisting desire into terror. Mia remembered the journal's warning. Never let it touch you willingly. Lust is its doorway. She realized they had already crossed that threshold, and now the cabin's dark inhabitant was hungry. Desperation surged through her. Summoning every ounce of willpower, she grabbed one of Ethan's devices, a small EMF meter, and pointed it at the largest shadow. The device buzzed violently, emitting pulses of light that seemed to slice through the darkness. For a moment, the entity recoiled, and Ethan regained some of his senses. "Mia, do it! Keep it focused!" he shouted, struggling against the invisible force. Mia's heart raced. Using the journal as a guide, she began chanting the instructions written in shaky handwriting, calling on whatever ancient protective force had once trapped the entity in the cabin. The shadows screamed a soundless, bone-chilling wail that penetrated both mind and body. Their forms twisted, stretching toward her like smoke, but Mia pressed on. Sweat dripped down her face, fear and adrenaline intertwining. Finally, with a blinding flash, the largest shadow was sucked back toward the fireplace mirror, trapped within its reflective surface. The room fell silent, the oppressive air lifting slightly. Ethan collapsed beside her, breathing heavily, alive but shaken. Mia stared at the mirror, now dark and still, knowing it contained the entity for the moment, but not forever. We barely survived," Ethan whispered, voice hoarse. "If we hadn't, I don't even want to think about it." Mia shook, the memory of what had happened leaving a lingering, erotic tension tinged with terror. The cabin, once a haven, had become a place of intimate nightmare, leaving them with a single, terrifying realization. The entity was patient, and desire was its escape. The escape conclusion, surviving the lustful nightmare. The first light of dawn barely pierced the fog outside the cabin. The forest, still thick and silent, seemed to be holding its breath. Mia and Ethan, exhausted and trembling, stared at the mirror that now contained the entity. Its dark surface was still, but they both knew the creature was only trapped temporarily. Desire, fear, or carelessness could free it again. Mia's body still shivered, the lingering touch of the entity leaving a subtle, erotic memory that was both thrilling and terrifying. Ethan reached for her hand, grounding her in reality. "We need to leave," he said softly. "We can't stay another second." Packing their belongings quickly, they moved through the cabin, careful not to disturb the shadows that seemed to lurk even in daylight. The journal, now clutched tightly in Mia's hands, contained a warning. "Do not return. Those who linger awaken the hunger again." As they stepped outside, the forest seemed to close around them, the trees whispering softly in a language they could not understand. But the sun, pale and weak, offered a glimmer of hope. They walked quickly, leaving the cabin far behind, hearts racing not just from fear, but from the strange, intimate experiences that had bound them together in terror. The drive back to Seattle was quiet. Both were lost in their thoughts, replaying the night's events. Mia felt a lingering warmth on her skin, a reminder of the entity's touch, and shivered involuntarily. Ethan, still pale, reached for her hand, squeezing it tightly. "We survived," he whispered. "But it's not over. It's patient. And it will wait for the next couple foolish enough to enter that cabin." Mia nodded, eyes fixed on the road ahead. "And we'll never go back. Ever." Even as the city skyline appeared in the distance, the forest and the cabin seemed to haunt their thoughts. The entity, trapped for now, had left an indelible mark not just on their bodies, but on their minds. Lust, terror,